Welcome back to my channel Lomzy Sews. In today's sewing tutorial, I'll be showing you how to make a flare gown with flounce and halter neck design. If that's what you want to learn, make sure not to skip any part of this video. Let's start with the tutorial. I'll be using 3.5 yards of fabric. I have scuba fabric, as you can see, it stretches a bit. I'm going to draft on my pattern paper because the fabric is too thick for me to cut directly on the fabric. First, I've drawn out the starting line, which will serve as the shoulder line. Next, I'm going to get the armhole length, which is 10 inches. I'll mark it here, and then the waistline, which is 17 inches, and then the dress length minus the flounce length, which is 32 inches. The easiest way to know your armhole length: from the shoulder sloping, you're going to divide your bust divided by 6 plus 1.5. That's the easiest way to know your armhole length. After squaring out all these lines, next is for me to take the circumference of the dress, and then I'll be starting with the shoulder width. So you're going to take your shoulder from one end of the shoulder bone to the other. Whatever you have, you're going to divide that by 2. In my own case is 8.5 inches. I'm going to mark it here, and I'm going to square that down to the armhole line. So here I'm marking 8.5 inches. I'm going to square this line to the shoulder line. So next is for me to mark the shoulder dropping. Before I do that, I'm going to get the width of the neckline, which is 3.5 inches. I'll mark it here, and on that shoulder line I'm going to come down 1.5 inches, which is for the shoulder sloping. If you're a beginner, we do this because our shoulders are not straight. So I'll go ahead and connect this like this. Next is to mark the neck depth. For the back, I'm going to use 1.5 inches for the neck depth, and I'm going to connect the line to the shoulder line. And for the front, I'm going to come down 4 inches for the neck depth, front neck depth 4 inches, and I'll also connect it to the shoulder line like this. Next, on the armhole length, I'm going to get the circumference of the bust, and this is the circumference we're using for this halter neck dress. So I'm going to divide the bust circumference divided by 4 plus ½ inch for ease. I'll go ahead and square this line down to the hemline. This will not be the final side seam we're using. When I'm cutting on the fabric, I'm going to add to the hemline. So I'll go ahead and square this line both on the waistline and the hemline and connect it like this. Next is for me to mark the armhole curve for the halter neck dress. I'm going to use my curve ruler to draw this. So I'm going to place my curve ruler as shown like this, and I'm going to draw the armhole line. And this is basically it for the halter neck dress. Next, I'm going to cut this out. So I'm going to cut this from here down to this using the silhouette. But first of all, you're going to add ½ inch sewing allowance all around. So this is the front and this is the back, and that's the difference between the front and the back. I'll go ahead and cut this out without adding any sewing allowance. When I'm cutting on my fabric, I'm going to add sewing allowance to this. After cutting out this pattern piece, this is how it's looking. Now I'm going to place this on my fabric and add sewing allowances here, and on the hem I'm going to increase and make a flay for the side. This is it after cutting it. As you can see, I've added sewing allowance, and for the front I cut these 2 pieces. I'll go ahead and cut 4 pieces of this, 2 for the back and 2 for the front. The difference is on the neckline, remember. Next is for me to sew this. From here I'm going to leave this place open and sew all the way down. You can skip this if you want to, but if you don't want to, I just want to do this so that I'll be able to know the front and the back. So I've gone ahead and sewn this and left this place open. I'm going to flip this open like this, and I'm going to close this like this and top stitch it. Just close it and top stitch each side if you have seen the design on the thumbnail. So I'll go ahead and sew the both sides and show you the next thing to do. So this is it after sewing it. Remember, you can skip opening this place. After top stitching this is how it's looking. I'll turn the other way to show you how the back looks. So next I'm going to sew the armhole. You're just going to flip this open, close like this and sew it. This is it after sewing it. Remember, this is a scuba fabric, so you don't necessarily need to overlock this. So this is it after top stitching on this. I'll do the same thing for the front. The only difference is that there is no opening for, there's no slits on the neckline for the front. So this is it after sewing it. I'm going to place the front panel on the back like this for me to sew the side seam. So next thing I'm going to do is to go to my sewing machine now, and I'm going to align the side seam like this, and I'm going to sew away 1/2 inch I've added for the sewing allowance. The same thing on the other side. I'm going to place it together like this and sew this. I'm trying to explain this so easily for any beginner to understand. Next is for us to sew the collar. So this is the fabric I'm using for the collar. As you can see, I've hemmed one side of the fabric that I cut out. Here I have 19 inches for the length, and for the width of the fabric I have 5 inches here after folding one side. So next I'm going to go to my machine and close one side. After closing it, this is how it's looking. I'll go ahead and notch the center front of the neckline. So I'm going to place this like this on my fabric. So after placing it, it's going to look like this on fold. Can you see? So I'll bring my main fabric and I'm going to place where I have notched the side that doesn't have the fold. I'm going to place it and sew this. The same thing for the back. I'm going to align this to the neckline like this, and I'm going to sew it. I'll sew it around and show you. This is it after sewing it. Can you see? So next thing I'm going to do is to fold this like this. Just watch what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. I'm going to fold this place inside and, you know, align it with the lower part that I have already hemmed, and I'm going to sew it round. After sewing it, this is how it's looking, all neat. Can you see? Next is for us to cut the flounce and sew it. So I folded my fabric into two like this and folded it again. Guys, I'm just trying to cut a flounce. This, I lost the clip on how I finally cut out this flounce, but as you can see how I folded it 4 times like this. Let me repeat the way I folded it. So I folded it once like this and folded again because I want to cut 2 pieces at the same time. So this is one, and I folded it again, and then I folded it again into 4. So I just used 2 inches for the radius, and the length of the flounce I used was 11 inches. You add sewing allowance to that, which will make it 12 inches. So that's basically what I did. And after cutting the flounce, I went ahead and joined it to the lower part of the dress, and this is the final look.
So many times that I miss you. I know how to call when I want to. Now you got way bigger issues.